Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on today's edition of the news on My Media Prime Television. It is coming to you live from Douala, Cameroon, and the news is a presentation of Macdella, Eyong. We begin today's edition of the newscast to tell you that a microfinance institution aimed at helping farmers with loans and credits have been awarded office materials, vehicles, bikes in order to expand their branches to other rural areas. This was done by the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Emmanuel C. covered that.
Agriculture in mountain areas have evolved over time. This activity, done mostly by the local community, has contributed to sustainable development for farmers here in Boya. Mount Cameroon is a busy place for farmers who move up and down the mountain each day for farming activities. This act, which provides ecosystem tourism services, contains more diversities than plain areas. Farmers say crops here enjoy the climate, which is most often cold.
Yeah, when you come here, find you. See, the place is always fresh, so it's easier to cultivate here. You don't need to water the plants.
But the weather up here is cool and is suitable for cocoyams.
The mountain, which has a dense forest while climbing up, becomes cold, as farmers are limited to a certain area of farming before the entrance of the Mount Cameroon National Park.
Yeah, it's cocoyams and also pepper. Then we have a local vegetable called ojango. We also introduce okomobong. That's a fluted pumpkin.
Those who cannot farm round here go for wood picking. In the southwest region, it is reported that agriculture is the main source of income to most families, as it produces food and preserves rural environment.
A 34-year-old woman in Kambendongang Mountain Division of the Northwest region of Cameroon has reportedly burnt herself to death after 2 failed attempts of taking her own life. Eileen Sama has details.
The name of the young lady who took her own life in Kambe, headquarters of Ndonga Mountain Division, on Tuesday, March 28, 2023, is Caroline Kisang, 34 years of age. As the story goes, Caroline Kisang locked herself in her room around 7:45 a.m. that fateful Tuesday morning before setting herself ablaze. The fire reportedly consumed the entire room and partly burned a boy who broke open the room door to rescue her, but was turned down by the deceased, who rather pulled her rescuer into the fire. The boy, whose back was seriously burned, is now admitted at the Mbinshua Hospital receiving medical care. Caroline's rescuer said that she had refused to be saved and rather pulled down the ceiling of the room, which caught fire and it fell on his back, leaving him seriously injured. Note that Caroline Kisang has tried at least 2 attempts to take her life, which ended in a fiasco. According to sources, Carol had earlier drank a corrosive acid and was rushed to the hospital, and later on rat poison, and was equally rescued and taken to the Nkambe District Hospital. Worthy of note here is the fact that this 34-year-old lady is said to have been going through depression during her suicide attempts. However, her family had taken her to a pastor and counselor, but it was concluded that her situation was beyond remedy. It is worth highlighting that this is the 3rd Cameroonian lady losing their lives to suicide in less than a week, 2 in the country and 1 in Maryland, USA, not leaving out the Cameroonian man who also ended his life in the US recently.
Away from that, some bone traffickers have been apprehended by gendarmerie forces recently in Ngaoundéré. According to reports, the bone traffickers dug 5 graves where they got the bones to sell before they were caught by these gendarmerie forces, as Katarina Kungwe tells us.
These are human bones that have been dug by these bone traffickers in Ngaoundéré, chief town of the Adamawa region of Cameroon. The gang of traffickers were apprehended recently by the National Gendarmerie in Ngaoundéré. According to information gathered, the bone traffickers had a deal with someone who promised to give them the sum of 30 million francs CFA should they supply him with human bones. The third person who failed to meet up with the deal made the traffickers to try selling to another person who wanted to buy the human bones for 11 million francs CFA before meeting their doom. Report also have it that the traffickers started the operation since December when they had this deal and had dug over 5 graves where they got the human bones. The bones packed in bags have been taken to the National Gendarmerie unit in Gaoundéré. Meantime, the culprits are currently under police custody while investigations are ongoing to track down the other gang members.
To talk about health, the Ministry of Public Health have sealed more than 10 optical shops at Marché Congo Douala considered to be operating illegally. Bokengo Kemiawade reports.
Seeking to curb eye complications such as glaucoma, cataracts, age-related macular degeneration, blindness and more, some 10 optical shops in the Congo market have been sealed in Douala by authorities of the Ministry for Public Health for operating illegally, fostering eye problems and complications in the country. Illegal eye operation and practice is risking the overall health of the general population, given the fact that most of them are not trained in the field, yet they do consultation and even do eye surgery. Leaving them to continue this practice will only increase the number of blind cases in the country. Our eyes are very delicate, and these practices are not supposed to be encouraged. Some shop owners at the market were very disgruntled by the measure put in place by the authorities.
They can give me a convocation and I will attend the meeting. Not closing my shop is not proper. You can't just enter inside someone's shop that is paying his taxes and you closing it without an invitation, without a convocation. It's not proper. We are all young people in the country. How do you people expect us to survive?
Laying emphasis on his opinion, the shop owner Exxon Clement says,
And the medical stuff, I don't see anything that I'm selling that is medical here. I don't consult. I don't mount lenses. I don't have a lenses. I'm just selling just a frame, simple frame. A frame and a sunshade. So I don't see any reason why they should close my shop.
With more than 1,000 blind cases in the country and more persons suffering from a kind and form of eye problems including cataracts, blindness, visual impairment and more, the authorities say this act is to help reduce cases of eye disease and visual impairment in the country as well as the risks of increased blindness.
The Anglophone crisis is in the 6th year running, and yet the ultimate still far reached. In this light, some religious leaders from the Council of Protestant Churches in Cameroon have been trained and urged to preach more on peace strategies in churches, as Nolinga tells us.
3 days, these religious leaders from the Council of Protestant Churches in Cameroon have been trained on conflict resolutory and management skills, with mediation being the focal procedure. Given that conflicts are common in the society, like Cameroon, which is not only stricken with the Anglophone crisis, but also the Boko Haram insurgents in the far north region of the country, this workshop is timely enough to help these leaders better preach peace amongst their Christians, respectively. Reverend Pastor Hamadina Salomon is the national president for the United Evangelical Churches in Cameroon and also doubles as first vice president of SEPCA, who says conflicts also emanate from the church. Thus, another reason why this workshop is timely enough.
Le conflit, la gestion de conflit. Vous savez, presque la quasi-totalité de nos églises vivent dans des conflits terribles, que ce soit au niveau des leaders ou bien des communautés, des anciens, des pasteurs. C'est pour ça que nous avons fait appel à notre partenaire pour venir nous aider, nous capaciter. Donc c'est pour ça que nous avons envoyé, chacune des églises a envoyé des représentants pour les former, pour les équiper, afin qu'ils puissent aider les communautés en conflit.
Characterized with a series of exchanges to facilitate the training series, Madame Ewane, a trainer at the workshop, has called this a practical mediation process.
It's a very practical mediation training. People really learn the process of mediation, the different phases, and they learn it in role plays and exercises. Conflicts about power, money, etc. in the churches. So the aim is really to build up a pool of mediators that can help the parties resolve the conflicts.
However, talking to these participants, he adheres there has been a shift in his thought pattern as to what mediation is really all about.
The interest of it is that we were already trying to do mediation in one way or the other in our churches in various situations, but we were doing it the way we understood it, the way we felt it was the best way to do it. But with this training, it helped us to really relocate the way we do things, adjust what was wrong, understand what was wrong, and be able to have new tools to correct everything for a better approach in mediating.
After satisfactorily training the various participants on mediation and related peace procedures, certificates of participation were also issued them by the organizers as they are expected to carry out a pass-it-on activity for a better and more peaceful Cameroon.
In the meantime, Cameroon's Minister of Territorial Administration, Noel Tamnjong, has had a one-on-one meeting with U.S. Ambassador to Cameroon yesterday, March 28, during which they discussed the relations between the U.S. and Cameroon. Ewane has details.
The Minister of Territorial Administration, Noel Tamnjong, has received in audience the Ambassador of the United States to Cameroon, His Excellency Christopher Lamora. The meeting took place in the afternoon of March 28, 2023 at the head office of the Ministry of Territorial Administration in Yaoundé. The visit of the U.S. diplomat to the MINAD headquarters had as major preoccupation to revisit relations that unite the two states, notably the cooperation which is demonstrated through the social, economic and cultural development projects and the political framework including the recent senatorial elections in Cameroon. The two statesmen also commended themselves on the win-win rapport both nations maintain, their support for the evolution of democracy and good governance, as well as the fight against corruption, which to them is President Paul Biya's battle horse. It should be noted that His Excellency Christopher Lamora's visit comes shortly after the news of some fellow Cameroonians hit by the U.S. Justice for allegedly having links with funding the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions, a move which they say will restore peace in the restive regions. Also worthy of note is the fact that the over 2 hours meeting equally focused on further enhancing relations between the U.S. and Cameroon.
The sum of 13,500,000 and 3,000 francs has been raised by members of FICUDA for the completion of an ultra-modern multipurpose empowerment center in Fingui, Bamungo subdivision, an amount raised by sons and daughters of Fingui Quarter over the weekend. Kuma Honore reports.
And daughters of Finki Quarter in Bamungo subdivision came out massively in Limbe over the weekend for the annual convention of Finki Cultural Development Association to speak one word, which is the development of Finki Quarter. Welcoming delegates drawn from the nooks and crannies of the globe, the Limbe branch president, Mr. Bofuashi, thanked the national executive for choosing Limbe to host the event and called on members to contribute for the development of their village. On his part, the national president of FICUDA, Mr. Tifulia Kinsley Sangui, congratulated members of FICUDA for their tremendous contribution, which has led to the realization of the ultra-modern multipurpose center, but like Oliver Twist, pleaded with them to contribute more for the completion of the project.
You can see all the sons and daughters of Finki that have come from all the corners of the world, and I think it will be a diaspora they are also highly represented. You can hear the financial contributions. The first phase was estimated to cost 15 million. It has already been realized. The second phase now is 30 million. And that's why we are here and we are optimistic that we will have.
The high point of the General Assembly was a fundraising to assist Fikuda complete the second phase of a gigantic multipurpose center back home. A sum of 13,503,000 francs CFA was raised on the spot to be used for the aforementioned project. The event was spiced with cultural dances and presentation of traditional music from some local artists such as Nkong Gladys and Shea Lantum. Created in 1994, Fikuda has played an important role in the development of Finki Quarters and Bamungo village at large, as it has contributed to the construction of the then Baptist Health Center, which is today a hospital, the supply of potable water to neighboring communities, construction of classrooms, and supported education through the donation of didactic materials and scholarship to some underprivileged children.
Youths of the Dynamic and Solidarity Association in Douala Littoral region of Cameroon have celebrated their second anniversary. The week-long activities, which began on March 19, was crowned with a gala on March 25, 2023. Joy Ngong covered that in our reports.
Dance displays, a football match, visit to an orphanage and a hospital, the Dynamic and Solidarity Youth Association, HJDS, in Village Dopassi 3 have celebrated their 2 years of existence. The week-long activities, which began on March 19, was concluded by a gala night on March 25 at their meeting point in Douala.
Le but, c'est étant de faire dans le social. Puisqu'on a vu que si on attend seulement tout du gouvernement.
The goal is to do charity. We cannot wait for the government to do everything. You must not have 1 million to make a change. You have to love your neighbor, share and live together, just like the president says. It is in this light that we created the association, of which I'm the founder.
C'est dans cet objectif-là qu'on s'est mis ensemble pour créer l'association HJDS, donc je suis le fondateur.
The association, which brings together youth from all social levels, is mostly humanitarian with the aim of giving back to the society.
On a livré un match amical.
We had a whole week of activities. On Sunday 19, we played a friendly match with another association. On Tuesday 21, we donated gifts to an orphanage. On Thursday 23, we visited and donated gifts to a hospital. And on Saturday, we had a gala night to invite partners to join our project. With many more years to go, youths of the Dynamic and Solidarity Association hope to do more good to the population.
9 young girls in Tole have received seed capital from BT Media Group Foundation to help them in their petite businesses ahead of the new school year. This was done over the weekend by the BT Media Group team, as we hear from our reporter, Emmanuel C.
Arriving at this small community in Tole, 9 girls have been selected to benefit from the BT Media Group Foundation, which is aimed at giving a helping hand to the vulnerable, especially girls. Representing the president of this foundation, Zenabu Tambe, Kum Leonard, general manager of the BT Media Group, handing over these gifts, say they come with prayers and love and hope that it will be used diligently. Etang Vivian is a single mom and has benefited from today's donation from the BT Media Group Foundation.
The money will help me and my child, but I'm a single mother, I'm an orphan, I don't have a mother, I don't have a father. So the money will help me a lot. I'll use it to make every to fry granite, to start out small things after one after another.
My Media Prime's editor-in-chief was part of this team, while encouraging them to start their petite businesses early. Basaka is a beneficiary and noted that the money will go a long way while waiting for the next academic year.
I want to thank BT Media for giving me this money. I'm a lady and life is not actually easy around here. We are mostly vulnerable. Guys are taking advantage of us. So this money, I'm going to use it to start a business that will help me to raise money. By September, I'll start going to school.
Zenabu Tambet say members of the My Media Prime Fan Club Committee Tole went back on supervising the beneficiaries in their petty businesses.
So they will try by all means to see that the money is used judiciously for the purpose that it was meant for.
The BT Media Group Foundation, headed by Zenabu Tambe, is aimed at reducing the number of school dropouts in vulnerable communities, especially the girl child.
Thank you, Emanuela C., for compiling that report. Now, out of Cameroon, UN's Secretary General Antonio Guterres has raised worries over Somal Sahel region becoming a new hub for terrorism and insecurity, while Malawi's information minister says the country is still struggling to recover after Storm Freddy destroyed several homes and left over 500 persons dead. Details of the stories and more with Quintofon.
Let's begin at the African continent with this worry raised by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who is deeply concerned by the gains terrorist groups are making in the Sahel. This concern was raised at a Security Council meeting on counter-terrorism called for by Mozambique. According to Mr. Guterres, despair, poverty, hunger, lack of basic services, unemployment, and unconstitutional changes in government continue to lay fertile grounds for the creeping expansion of terrorist groups to infect new parts of the continent.
But the situation in Africa is especially concerning. Despair, poverty, hunger, lack of basic services, unemployment, and unconstitutional changes in government continue to lay fertile ground for the creeping expansion of terrorist groups to infect new parts of the continent. I am deeply concerned by the gains terrorist groups are making in the Sahel and elsewhere.
Away from that, Kenya opposition leader Raila Odinga says he and his supporters did not imagine that the state would respond with violence to the ongoing protest over the high cost of living. His statement came after Monday's anti-government demonstrations turned violent, with the police firing tear gas at protesters and looters going on rampage. Calls for calm and dialogue in Kenya have multiplied, including from the African Union. Elsewhere, Malawi's information ministry says the situation in the country is too dire 2 weeks after Storm Freddy left a trail of devastation in the southern region. Information Minister Moses Kukuyu told the press that the death toll had risen to over 600 and many people displaced were still living in camps that provide shelter and food, with a risk of outbreaks of waterborne diseases in the camps due to congestion. He said there was a crisis in the health and education sector in the area affected by the storm. Note that Storm Freddy struck Mozambique and Malawi earlier this March for the second time in a month, destroying scores of homes and triggering widespread floods.
Still out of the country, 38 migrants trying to enter the USA have died in Mexico after fire broke out at a migrant processing center. Meantime, in the USA still, a 28-year-old woman was killed by police after she entered an elementary school and gunned down 3 children as well as 3 teachers, including the school's principal. Shillian Dambe tells us more.
We begin in America, where at least 38 people have died at a migrant processing center in Mexico as a result of a fire outbreak. Officials say the migrants themselves set fire to mattresses in protest after discovering they would be deported. Many of the victims had traveled from Central and South America trying to get into the US, but unfortunately they were picked up by authorities on Monday and taken to the center. Recent weeks have seen a build-up of migrants in Mexican border cities as authorities attempt to process asylum requests. And now a 28-year-old woman police have identified as Audrey Hill on March 27, 2023, entered a private Christian elementary school in Nashville, USA and fatally shot 3 children and 3 adults. The woman is said to have had detailed maps of the school and its security protocols. Video captured by security cameras in the school shows how the killer gained access into the school by firing several shots to a side door. She was armed with 2 assault-style rifles and a handgun. When police arrived at the school minutes later, the shooter was killed. U.S. President Joe Biden has addressed the deadly shooting, calling the deaths a family's worst nightmare, and is urging Congress to enact gun control legislation. Meanwhile, in France, several protesters have been arrested by police as street demonstrations on Tuesday, March 28, turned violent. Thousands of people took part in marches across France against Emmanuel Macron's use of constitutional executive powers to push through retirement age from 62 to 64. In Paris, police fired tear gas at the crowd of protesters after some of them raided and looted a supermarket and then started a fire.
And now to talk sports as we draw closer to the conclusion of the 2023 AFCON qualifiers. Today, we take a look at the teams that have already qualified and those with hopes of making it to Ivory Coast for the tournament next year, as we hear in this report. Of the 48 nations taking part in the ongoing African Cup of Nations qualifiers, only 24 will grab a ticket to the tournament final to be staged in Ivory Coast next year. As at now, the 48 countries seeking for a ticket to the 34th edition of this competition have so far played 3 and 4 games out of 6, and only the top 2 teams from each group will qualify. As it stands, Senegal, Algeria, Morocco, Burkina Faso, Egypt, Tunisia and South Africa have all booked their places in the tournament scheduled to run from January to February next year. Ivory Coast gained automatic qualification as host nation. The likes of Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, Cameroon, Guinea, Central African Republic, Tanzania, Congo, Zambia, Sudan, Equatorial Guinea, and Mozambique as second positions in Group A to L respectively are the favorites to also secure a place in the tournament, though not official. The Super Eagles of Nigeria, Ghana, Gabon, and Mali, though top of their group, still have to go through at least 1 qualification game to decide their fate. Defending champions Senegal will be facing fierce competition in this edition of the tournament from these fellow African powers who have secured their early positions in Africa's biggest set piece as they try to become the first back-to-back AFCON champions since Egypt won 3 straight in 2006, 2008, and in 2010. The contest continues. The sports story crowns today's edition of the news on My Media Prime Television. Thank you for watching. We always do appreciate your time. The news was supervised by Lasha Kingsley, produced by Ewane Nolinga, and for presentation I was Macdella, Eyong. Have a good night.